Residents start their engines as V8 fans get fired up. The roar of the racing engines got the blood pumping for this man who used his walking stick to pull down a supporter's flag. The tussle just one of the disputes at the demonstration.
So I've been in the pits with the boys, I've been on the straight, I've been at the beginning of Bathurst when they all start their engines, everything like that. That radio was way louder than what it is in person.
Event organisers recorded the engine audio at 95 decibels in a bid to demonstrate how November's race will impact on the health and safety of residents.
The houses are extremely close to the road. Often front doors are only 2 metres away from the area which will become the racing circuit.
But hecklers highlighted division in the community. The group insists it's not against the race but the track's location and says it's fighting for the area's vulnerable residents.
Many of the residents here are so frail and elderly they can't move, they have nowhere to go and they're not capable of movement.
Supercars maintains it will make every effort to minimise disruption to residents and businesses, but organisers today confirmed that the movement of infrastructure, including barriers, pit buildings and grandstands, will take place up to 6 weeks before the event and 3 weeks after it. Georgina Smythe, NBN News. Lakeside and locked up. This is the sad state of Lake Macquarie's iconic Pelican Marina site. Broken pylons, a rusting seawall and concrete slab are all that remains of the venue that was once a hive of activity.
We all know how important this site is for the community broadly. It's well utilised, it showcases the entrance to Lake Macquarie, and it's certainly a facility that is iconic in actual fact in Lake Macquarie.
The member for Swansea taking the opportunity to pressure the new head of Crown Lands, Paul Toole, to fast-track a decision on the site's future.
Obviously the Minister will need to settle in, but I'll be right there knocking on his door and making sure that he is aware of the urgency of this particular application, and let's get it resolved.
The Minister's office says the site will open to the public after stabilisation work on the foreshore is complete. As for the reconstruction of the marina, a spokesperson for the Minister says the community and council will be consulted before any decisions are made.
They sat on their hands and did absolutely nothing, and now they've got a fenced off area on the beautiful edges of Lake Macquarie.
Meantime, Lake Macquarie Council is due to make a decision on the relocation of a nearby boat ramp in the coming months. Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
Oscar is a happy and healthy 5-year-old boy, but when he was just 8 months old, he and his twin sister were hospitalised with bronchiolitis, a common viral lung infection in infants.
They had difficulties breathing and based on the review by the GP, we needed to come to the hospital.
It was here at the John Hunter Children's Hospital where Oscar took part in a world-first trial. He was home after just 24 hours.
Being able to come home very quickly and for him to improve overnight is a great plus for our whole family.
The 2012 study, led by clinical nurse consultant Dr. Elizabeth Kepriotis, examined 2 types of oxygen therapy, standard and high flow, in 202 children.
Those that were on the standard therapy failed to be supported in about 30% of the children. So those babies were allowed to try the new treatment and 60% of those babies improved on it.
The results of high flow treatment speaking for themselves.
It keeps babies out of intensive care. The procedures of the trial were successful in their own right. Children are off oxygen in half the time that they were previously. And the measures we put in place see them getting home a day earlier.
The study has now been recognised globally in The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal. It's also led to more extensive research being done locally into the condition.
Bronchiolitis is the most common lung infection in infancy. It is the also single most common cause of hospital admissions in early life, and there's a strong link between bronchiolitis and the later development of asthma.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
All smiles off the field, but Joe Wardle isn't as friendly on it. The 25-year-old has a reputation as a hard-nosed forward with plenty of mongrel.
I try to get stuck in, I'm not one of those that take a backward step. I like to rip in and obviously try to take it forward sort of thing. Defensively, I don't hold back. I try to get forward and be quite aggressive.
He started his career as a centre, but has since moved into the back row. That's where he expects he'll play in red and blue.
When we spoke and stuff, we're probably going to be a mixture of maybe back row and centre. Back home, I've been back row for the last 2 years, which I feel is probably my best position. So, but end of the day, I'll play wherever he wants me to play.
Wardle has had minor knee surgery since the end of last season, but expects to be in full training within a matter of weeks.
I'm starting back running this week, so hopefully it won't take me too long to get back to full fitness, and like I say, hopefully I can be ready for the start of the year.
With Nathan Brown in Auckland for the Nines, Simon Wolford and Mick Potter will take the reins for tomorrow night's trial against Tweed Seagulls.
We've got a few 20s kids, we've got some part-time guys getting their first run, and then we've got the guys like Trent Hodkinson who've had their injury problems over the pre-season looking to get their first run under the belt.
Daniel Collins and Isaac Costello are on the cusp of something special.
It's been the goal since I was a little kid to get in the series, so yeah, to be able to make the final series would be really good.
This weekend is probably fair to say the most important weekend of my life. I think it's really going to prove what sort of person I am to myself. I think I deserve it.
19-year-old Collins is currently fourth and only needs to maintain his place inside the top 5 to qualify. While clubmate Costello is 2 places back in 6th, he needs to jump 1 spot in order to make the series, which will take place at Cronulla later this month.
I'm an angry sort of racer, so as soon as I get a sniff of a lead, I sort of try and take off. But yeah, I've been working on trying to be a bit smarter in races, and I think over the past week, I've been working with my coaches and I've cut out a few of the main errors I've been doing.
21-year-old Costello has been knocking on the door of the series since he was 16. He's put his job on hold for several weeks in a desperate attempt to make the grade.
I've focused more than I ever have before a carnival or a race before in my life, and I've never wanted something so much.
Collins is still a teenager, and while he's inside the cut-off line before this weekend's competition gets underway, he refuses to race conservatively.
Definitely still on the attack. I've got a 15th that I'd like to get rid of. If I can get inside the top 10, that would really lock down my spot in the series.
Under the gaze of the global media, Chinese billionaire Jack Ma and Gladys Berejiklian on her first official trip to Newcastle as Premier. Mr Ma's $26 million donation is one of the largest ever received by an Australian university, funding the Ma and Morley Scholarship Program that will assist up to 90 students a year for the next 2 decades.
The money that I made, the money I own does not belong to me. I have the responsibility to spend the money in a better way.
It's generosity that has come full circle, the billionaire tycoon honouring a long-running friendship with the late Ken Morley, a tradesman and Novocastrian who first met Mr Ma as an eager 15-year-old during a family holiday to China in 1980.
If the one person that I really thankful, if there's one country that outside China that I'm really thankful is Australia and Ken Morley.
In 1985, Ken Morley invited Mr Ma to Newcastle, a defining moment for the young Chinese national. He'd later go on to develop e-commerce giant Alibaba and is now one of China's richest men, worth an estimated $28 billion US.
Business is not about how smart you are. It's not about money, how much money you have. Doing business is also about a friendship.
And it's that theme of friendship the business mogul hopes will inspire future generations. Amanda Bennett, NBN News.
Lights dim and tension builds as a circus presents its lead act. 5 lions and tamer Matthew Ezekiel wow the crowd with these daring acts.
People still get a buzz out of seeing the animals, and especially the lions.
But protesters outside are less than impressed.
It's just a life so foreign to a wild animal's needs and wants, physically, mentally. They spend a lot of time just sitting around in cages waiting for the show to happen.
The group says the circus has come to town via a loophole by leasing private land and circumventing a Newcastle council ban on exotic circus animals. But ringmaster Adam St James says they lodged a DA and must adhere to strict rules about animal welfare.
We do the right thing. Neither of our circuses have ever had a conviction of animal cruelty in this country, and that's something that we're very, very proud of.
Protests outside are timed with performances under the big top and have gained plenty of attention.
The police were here last week purely because we had almost 100 people here.
The circus says as long as there's demand for animal acts, they'll continue to incorporate them into their shows and that their ticket sales show no signs of slowing down.
The people that are actually buying a ticket is what's keeping these animals in the circuses.
The circus says it's got nothing to hide.
Everyone is entitled to their belief, but I invite people, I say come and have a look. And these people out the front have been invited by the circus management to come and have a look around. They don't want to.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
A new skipper and a new look Knights side. Fans are expecting big things from playmaker Brock Lamb, and he produced early. Lamb with the last pass for the Knights' next try, only minutes later. The Tigers managed to barge over before the break and shortly after the resumption of play. But Newcastle never looked troubled, crossing for a third. In their second match, Newcastle drew first blood when Danny Levi burrowed over, but Brisbane returned serve through Jordan Kahu and extended their advantage after the break, again through Kahu. The Knights hit back when a Brock Lamb kick was spilled in the Broncos' in goal. But Brisbane eventually kicked away for a comfortable win. Ironman's biggest names racing for a spot on the sport's biggest stage. Redhead's Isaac Costello on the far left of screen, getting off to a reasonable start, sitting middle of the pack by the first turning can. Off the board, Luke Cuff and Hayden White had a slight advantage, with Costello leading the chase pack. The leaders were brought back to the pack in the swim leg until they arrived in the wave area where Shannon Eckstein made his move. He would go on to build his lead while Costello emerged in 9th position ahead of the final leg. Eckstein was all class, increasing his lead on the ski. Behind him, the race for the minor placings was on. Costello getting out-muscled on the final turning flag by veteran Wes Berg to finish 11th. And despite missing the Ironman final, Redhead's Dan Collins picked up a wave in the men's surf race to snatch the win.
Yeah, it was a good win. Good to get another win in a summer surf race, and yeah, I think tops me off on the point score.
Owen Muddle was asleep inside his Sawyers Gully Road property this morning at around 8 o'clock when he was woken by a passerby alerting him to smoke coming from his home. Now, when Owen woke up and walked outside, flames were already tearing through the property, and somehow he managed to make his way out to safety. Fire crews arrived soon after. There were 10 in total from both the RFS and the New South Wales Fire and Rescue. Unfortunately, there was very little that those firefighters could do, and by the time they had arrived, fire had well and truly taken hold.
It was quite intense. There was smoke and flames issuing from the rear and the side of the house. It quickly involved the whole house, and we just did our best to extinguish.
Unfortunately, Owen lost all his possessions in the fire. The home, thankfully though, was insured. As for the cause, that is now under investigation.
I'm calling on the RMS to look at the intersection, roundabout, traffic lights, whatever's safest to move the traffic.
today everyone's been on board. People with their foster dogs have been talking with people. I've got lots of applications that have been filled out for people interested in puppies and older dogs that they want to donate.
Across the region, a spectacular show lit up the sky, a reminder of just how powerful and dangerous Mother Nature can be.
The girls were a bit scared because it was noisy, Dad was away, and I started filming the girls, see if we could get some on film and send it through to my husband, and we did. We got it hitting a house just across the way. It made the most craziest noise, so I dropped my phone afterwards and the girls were screaming, so yeah, it was pretty deafening.
Today, Escaping the Sun was the name of the game. At Hunter Ice Skating Stadium, they may have been chickening out from the heat, but staying cool wasn't always easy.
We normally open about 11:30, so we started having people come in about 1:15, so I started to let them in just so they're out of the heat, and yeah, it was been a good, busy day today.
And if you couldn't skate on it, icy treats were the next best thing. As the Hunter roasted, traditional hotspots proved popular. Beach safety a major concern.
The conditions are a little bit tricky today. We've got a lot of water moving around. We had a southerly through last night, so there is a bit of a undertow off the back of the flags, but we've got plenty of people out there trying to keep people safe.
Meredith Gibbs, NBN News.
The Glory's attacking weapons quickly found their rhythm in Perth. Castro weaved into the box to earn a soft penalty. The Spaniard calmly dispatched his 5th goal of the season from the spot. The referee's assistant then denied Perth a second. Andrew Houle had a shout for a penalty of his own. Instead, Andrew Naboot helped him find a way through. At the other end, Castro was wreaking havoc. He had a brace before half-time. Wayne Brown returned from injury in the second act just in time to see a former Jet make it 3-1. Replays showed he was just onside. With the game slipping away, Jason Hoffman put his hand up for goal of the round. The defender had a late chance to steal a point, but 3-2 was how it stayed.
On the beat, specially trained police, domestic violence offenders in their sights.
Our police are out there every day dealing with domestic violence and the broken women in the homes and the broken children.
Look over your shoulder if you're a domestic violence offender. If you're at work, we may turn up there to make sure you're complying with your order. If you're at the pub and you're leaving the pub, well, we might be watching you.
The team, only the second of its kind in New South Wales, has been operating in the Hunter for the past week.
So far we've had 6 arrests, which has amounted to 10 charges, and 2 bail refused, which has been a great start from our perspective.
The team, which is made up of 6 constables and a sergeant, tracks high-risk domestic violence offenders, ensuring apprehended violence orders are followed while supporting victims. It's another step in addressing a growing crisis. Last year, 15,000 assaults were recorded in the northern region. More than half of those were domestic violence related, while almost 1,000 were committed by repeat offenders.
30% of domestic violence offenders have committed other forms of offences. They've robbed houses, they've sold drugs. So this team of 6 people, when they lock up a domestic violence offender, they're protecting a victim. They're reducing the workload for the police on the front street, but they're also reducing crime.
While still in its infancy, police hope to one day deploy the team further north. Amanda Bennett, NBN News.
One of the final witnesses in Graham Sloan's murder trial, clinical psychologist Dr. Gary Banks. Today he gave an account to the court of what Sloan told him while undergoing cognitive therapy last year. When she got about 20 feet away, that's when it started to happen. I remember the first stab. Going on to say, I was standing in front of her. She'd fallen face down. She was dead. Sloan is accused of stabbing Mrs. Mitchell to death on the afternoon of November 11, 2014, at a reserve less than 1 kilometre from her Windale home. The defence claims Sloan was suffering an abnormality of the mind at the time. Dr. Banks told the jury Sloan said after the killing, I walked away. I don't remember looking back, just leaving her for dead. Previously, the jury heard Sloan made a dramatic presentation to clinical staff at Silverwater Prison, a psychiatrist diagnosing him with mania and bipolar with psychosis. And earlier, former friend Kylie Henderson broke down as she told the court she warned Mrs. Mitchell about Sloan during their last ever conversation, telling her he's up to something.
The trial, set down for 2 weeks, is now at the halfway point, with the prosecution set to call its final witness tomorrow. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
"17 years and $100 million later, work to clean up the 150-hectare BHP site is almost complete. It's been managed by the state government and paid for by BHP Billiton. One of the final pockets to be treated is the land surrounding the monument to workers known as the muster point.
So the muster point is going to be fenced off and they're going to carry out remediation work there.
Third-generation steelworker Aubrey Brooks says the Industrial Heritage Association is negotiating with the University of Newcastle to use the old manager's house known as Del Pratt's Cottage for his regular history talks normally held at the muster point. But Aub laments the lack of activity on the once thriving site.
And I'm really disappointed that site is still empty. You've got to remember, in 1964, there was over 11,000 people on day work on that site. And now there's just nothing. It doesn't matter which government you support. Both governments have been in and still nothing has been done. I think it's very sad for Newcastle.
Aub says the final remediation works will close a chapter in Newcastle's history.
Mate, it's very important that we never forget, Paul, the men and women of steel. And that's why we built the memorial and the time capsule and the muster point. And one of my main concerns that I want people to look at, that these items of interest in Newcastle, these icons to our steel history, should be preserved.
He was squeezed out of an automatic qualifying spot at a tense final round on Saturday. Today, Costello's hard work finally paid off.
I've been waiting to do this since I was under sixes. It's been my biggest dream ever, so to get that call and take all the weight off my shoulders.
The wild card hands him a place in the 40-man 3-round national series to be held at Cronulla starting on February 24.
I've been racing these guys all year, sort of week in, week out, so I sort of know what I've got myself into, and I think I can go in there and sort of mix it up with them.
Joining clubmate and close friend Daniel Collins at the prestigious event is icing on the cake.
We're pretty competitive towards each other, but he's one of my best mates, so it means heaps more just to be with him and sort of go through it with him as well.
Still on the sand, and Swansea Belmont Surf Club is preparing to host the state titles. Blacksmiths was tranquil today, but come February 25, the beach will be overrun by 7,000 competitors over 3 weekends as the event returns for the first time since 2010.
And it's been at Umina since in Kingscliff. Look, our workforce and everyone are just right behind us, and we're chomping at the bit to put on the best state titles in a lot of years.
The host club believes it can finish in the top 5 in the juniors, but will have tough competition from Sydney teams and a few Hunter rivals. The volunteers and club officials have a bigger battle on their hands.
We get containers and compounds and everything, and our workforce are working day in, day out, getting that all set up, and then right through the championships, you know, from cleaning the toilets, picking up the rubbish after everyone leaves. While everyone's gone home for their food, we're still here working away.
He was trapped such that his only just a part of his face was above the water, just his nose and his forehead was above the water. He's been extremely lucky to survive.
It's potentially a world-first treatment to an all-too-common addiction.
Nobody in the US or Europe have tried this sort of approach before.
When it comes to cannabis use here in Australia, the latest figures show 1 in 3 adults have used it at least once. So too have 15% of people under the age of 18, and in the past 12 months, 10% of Australians aged 14 or older have used the drug.
After alcohol and amphetamines, it's about the third most common reason that people present for treatment.
Now, Hunter New England Health is studying the effectiveness of a new prescription oral spray. Participants will be given either the spray or a placebo.
It doesn't have a psychoactive effect, it doesn't have a stone associated with it, but it might be helpful in reducing things like anxiety or, in that case, seizures.
The prescription drug being used in this trial, Sativex, does carry the risk of addiction. But Hunter New England Health says that risk is a mitigated one, and the chances of that happening are similar to a smoker becoming addicted to nicotine patches.
There's a risk, that's of course one of the things that we'll monitor.
10 people are already taking part in Newcastle, but organisers are hoping for at least 20 more.
And that's essentially people who are dependent on cannabis, that is, they can't stop smoking cannabis by themselves, and they're interested in trying to stop cannabis using a medication.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
And we're excited that we can do our little part in getting the interchange open. People can come from Sydney, people can come from afar to come and see this great event.
Andrew Rogers is the face of an unfolding drama affecting Hunter students.
I just feel like I've been lied to, cheated.
Andrew signed up to a team leadership and management course through private provider Evoca early last year. But $15,000 in student debt later, the Hunter Street office is locked, and Andrew has an incomplete course and no qualification that he will still have to pay for.
I agreed on, and what I paid for was 25 hours study in the classroom at this branch, and it no longer exists.
More than 1,500 people across the Hunter have been affected by the closures of education providers. There are now fears students are still signing up to suspended providers because the state government won't publicly name and shame them.
We're saying to Gladys Berejiklian and the Liberal government, come clean, tell us the names of the suspended providers so students in places like the Hunter can make informed decisions about where they're enrolling.
People across the Hunter are losing those opportunities because of these shonky providers not delivering on what they should be.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News. The wharves are traditionally a man's world, but these dads don't mind showing off a bit of pink. They're proud participants in a world-first father-daughter program.
Learning about resilience and persistence and staying calm was, it was a very positive experience.
NBN News first came across the University of Newcastle's Daddy program in 2014. Standing for Dads and Daughters Exercising and Empowered, the program uses physical activity to improve the social and emotional well-being of primary school-aged girls, at the same time improving the father-daughter relationship.
We're overcoming many of the barriers that girls face in regards to physical activity and sport through improving their understanding of gender equity and giving them the confidence and skills and knowledge to overcome the barriers that they face.
What started as a study with the help of Port Waratah Coal Services, Daddy will now be taught to the university's PE students.
Girls and boys should have equal opportunities, so I want to try and enforce that in my school community.
The next goal for this groundbreaking program is to make it a compulsory subject for all teaching students at the university.
Fathers tend to spend more time with their sons and their daughters and discount their really important role. So we really want to make them aware of that, they know that they matter, but also give them the skills and parenting strategies to enhance their daughters' lives.
Kate Haberfield, NBN News.
With goals such as this one against Melbourne City, it's easy to see why Naboot received the PFA award.
It's a real proud and happy moment for me because it's to be recognised for my efforts by my teammates and by my opponents is massive. So yeah, I'm stoked.
The accolade won't hurt his chances of a call-up to the Socceroos, especially considering national team coach Ange Postecoglou signed the 24-year-old at Melbourne back in 2012. Another solid performance against the Victory this weekend at McDonald Jones Stadium will also help.
I'll have to continue my form throughout the season for me to even get a sniff, and it's obviously a massive dream for me, but at the moment I'm trying to keep my feet on the ground and not think about it so much, because then it just adds a little bit of unnecessary pressure.
Naboot has scored 7 goals this campaign, but against Perth he turned provider for another Andrew.
You know, you play in the front third, so you need to score goals, and I know that, so it's nice to get 5 now this season, and I want to get more in the remaining games and help the team make the top 6.
Off contract at the end of this season, Houle doesn't hide the fact he's interested in playing overseas. For now, he's focusing on the task at hand.
Honestly, I've not even thought about it, being perfectly honest, and I'm just concentrating on playing, so it is what it is at the moment, and maybe sort it out the next couple of weeks, we'll see.
Everyone remembers that one, big name that comes to school, and I remember when I was in school it was James McManus, and I think it's really important to deliver a real important message where today respect, belonging, and those kind of words were our key focus. A fair few people watching, and Mal obviously being the Australian coach, there's definitely a lot to play for, and just for my personal self, I'd really like to play good and hopefully run off the back of that.
It's a very proud day, Greg. I've followed this right through from the first time we started to make applications to get the funding for this, and it was definitely needed. It was we were in desperate times back then.
Full credit goes to Racing New South Wales, to obviously the Newcastle Jockey Club, but I'm sure all the leading trainers are going to bring their horses here to give them every chance.
Both the Crown and the defence wrapped up their cases in the murder trial of Graham Sloan today. Crown prosecutor Lee Carr telling the 12-person jury that although there were a number of odd circumstances in the case, Sloan had the intent and planning, along with the uncontrollable urge to kill Mrs Mitchell on the afternoon of November 11, 2014. Adding, the question is not whether he is a master criminal, the question is, was his capacity to understand right from wrong affected in a substantial way? The defence argues Sloan was suffering from an abnormality of the mind at the time of the killing adding that the question for the jury is whether he had the capacity to understand events, to understand right from wrong, and to control himself. The trial heard Sloan has been diagnosed bipolar with psychosis and mania. Sloan says he dropped Mrs. Mitchell at nearby shops on the afternoon of her death and that he gave her his wallet to pay for some goods. But the court heard that wallet was found by detectives in Sloan's bloody jumper on his bedroom floor. The prosecution maintains even if there was mental illness, he may still have the capacity to know right from wrong and to control his actions. Justice Helen Wilson gave her closing address this afternoon before discharging the jury to consider its verdict.
$33 That's how long it will take Waratah West Public to fix a raft of maintenance issues with its current amount of state government funding. That's according to documents obtained by Labor under Freedom of Information, and the school isn't alone.
Irrawang High School has $1.7 million worth of maintenance backlog repairs, and they've got a pittance, $100,000, to try and fix that every year.
Shadow Minister for the Hunter, Kate Washington, says Awabba Public School has more than $171,000 worth of outstanding work, but was allocated just over $8,300 this financial year, while it will take 2 decades for Newcastle Middle School to complete its repairs.
We're not talking about the luxury items, we're talking about the basics: broken drains, broken toilets, broken window fittings. Frustrations are high in the schools. Students and teachers across the Hunter deserve so much better.
A spokesperson for the Department of Education says any maintenance issue that poses a risk to students or staff is addressed immediately, and that the backlog reflects the estimated cost of current and future repair work, with many items listed in the document already complete. Emma Murphy, NBN News.
Unfurled and pulled into place.
It looks fantastic. It's a special moment, mate. I always enjoy this moment.
Organisers of the Hunter's biggest surfing event getting ready for another year.
Surfest 2017 at Merewether Beach, yeah, it's on.
Today workers continue to piece together the scaffolding, building a competition site bigger than ever to cope with an increase in competitors.
There's more area needed for the warm-up before they go out into the water and cooling down when they come down. And we just need bigger area, more area, and make it more accommodating for them.
And there's also more for the fans. After crowds flocked to the Bathers Way in record numbers last year, extra shade will be installed.
They bring their deck chairs, they bring their fold-out chairs, whatever, they sit there for the day under shade.
There's plenty going on now, and it's only going to get busier over the next fortnight, peaking on finals weekend with the Beats and Barrels markets.
It's going to be a fantastic finals weekend, and hopefully we get good waves along the way.
The waves have arrived ahead of schedule. Today, Ryan Callanan and his friend Federico Marias were out at Merewether. Marias, who's on this year's World Tour, is the first big name to roll into town, getting used to the Merewether banks, which at the moment are looking good.
Hopefully you'll carry that all the way through to the Maitland and Port Stephens Toyota Pro.
Samuel Jordan, NBN News.
Small in stature and quiet by nature, for some reason Rojas loves making a big statement against Newcastle. The 25-year-old has made a habit of scoring against the Jets throughout his career. In the last 4 meetings between the two clubs, he's had a hand in 9 goals.
He's a really good player and he's a really good guy as well. You know, I used to room with him when I played there, and his form hasn't slumped at all this season. He's come back right where he left off last time.
The Jets conceded 3 goals in round 18, but remain confident they can contain the Victory's attacking weapons.
Melbourne City had some quality and we defended fantastically well 2 weeks ago against them, and this game for me will be no different. They've got quality all across the park.
That quality includes the league's leading scorer.
Barisha's always a handful. I think the centre halves in particular, our captain Nigel will be looking forward to that battle essentially against Bessart.
Jason Hoffman got himself on the score sheet in the loss to Perth, but wasn't in a mood to celebrate.
Look, whilst I'm happy with obviously scoring a goal for the club, obviously there was a chance a couple of minutes later to score another and I didn't, so the result's the most important thing.
In a boost for Newcastle, Steven Ugarkovic returns from suspension while Ivan Vujiko is back in full training as he recovers from a hamstring injury.
It's still really fun, there's swell. We've had a few contests this year where it's been really small, so even though it's a bit all over the shop, but to have swell is really good.